If you want to stay socially limited and have your battery constantly drained, one of the best ways to do that is to never give yourself the opportunity to adapt and recover.
That person to connect whatever it is they're currently doing to the goal that they truly desire. A good coach is going to help bridge those gaps. Welcome back to Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition. And today we have a little bit of a treat for you. We've actually gone through our Facebook group, which, by the way, if you're not a part of, we have over 100,000 people in there. You should definitely be a part of that. Go search on Facebook, jump in there, good conversation. But we've pulled these questions out of the Facebook group as questions that have been recently asked, and we just wanted to get out there and answer them for you guys. So, Andrew, how you feeling today on a Monday?
I mean, it's a Monday for sure. Got to do a little bit of driving this weekend, so checked out Pensacola a little bit. That was a whole fun time, and yeah, actually pretty even keel for the week ahead. How about you, man? Did you have a fun little weekend? Did you have a lot of activities this weekend?
I wouldn't call it a fun weekend. We stress at home, all the things, but it was good to get home. Made some really kick-ass steaks yesterday for Father's Day, so that was nice. And just hung around otherwise. So
yeah. Did they at least make you the steaks, or did you have to make them
Oh
yourself?
no, I wanted it to taste good. Most loving way possible.
100%. Yeah, you don't trust the family to do your stuff medium rare.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, it's well done. Look, it's charred in the middle, just like you like it. You're like, oh, exactly. What is that? What is that? I'll fight you.
So,
but okay, well, pretty cool. So these questions today, we're gonna serve them up to you, and I'm actually very curious to hear what you have to say. You're definitely probably one of the more pro-social between the two of us. I've gone feral after working from home for the last 4.5 years. But so one of the things that people often struggle with is the social aspect, specifically in-person coaches and trainers. And so this one individual fielded a couple different questions that all revolved around how to be socially agile during the actual delivery of a service and how not to make it awkward, because obviously when you're uncomfortable and you're sitting there trying not to throw up during some back squats, you don't really care about the small talk. But when you got to sit there for 2 to 4 minutes and let your mind wander, it's probably helpful to distract someone. So, the first question is, Steve, how do you motivate unmotivated clients? And obviously, with your more recent business endeavors, I would like to hear the business aspect of that stuff as well, because I think that's also applicable.
Yeah, I think motivating unmotivated people, I'm going to give you two sides of this. The first side is like angry Steve side, which isn't necessarily the right answer, but I think it can be applied in certain scenarios, is if they're unmotivated, then they're just never going to reach their goal, and let them know that. Mm-hmm. So they need to actually put the effort in, get motivated, and do the damn thing. But while that's not the right answer, there's the real power, I would say, comes down to that person to connect whatever it is they're currently doing to the goal that they truly desire. A good coach is going to help bridge those gaps. Mm-hmm. Now, motivation is important in small bursts, in small pieces. And if they are never motivated, what the fuck are we doing? Again, first point. But the reality is you need to fall in love with the process, and you need to fall in love with the ongoing kind of striving for that goal and the micro wins along the way. So if I come to you and, hey, I want to lose 100 pounds, sure. But guess what happens after I lose 40? Man, I still got 60 to go. So a good coach will break down those goals, smaller micro goals that we can celebrate along the way. They're going to tie yesterday, today's, and tomorrow's efforts towards achieving that long-term big picture goal, but also those smaller goals. And we're going to continue to have temp checks around how somebody's feeling with certain things. For example, I love lifting heavy. When you change my program, Andrew, to not lift heavy, I'm like, man, I hate this fucking thing. And I think I struggled through it for a week or two, and I show him Andrew, why am I doing this? And it's like, well, we're going to help with your joints, your tendons, your ligaments, and all of these things. So that way we continue to
Mm-hmm.
lift heavy without injury. And I'm like, all right, I'll just get it done. I don't love it, but I understand it, big picture goal. And then 6 months from now, I'm not going to care. And it's just the ability to have those conversations, I would say. So if they're not motivated, they don't understand why they're doing something. I would say, I'd love your opinion on a psychological sense, Andrew. Obviously, mine is coming from my point of view. But
Mm-hmm.
business wise, you need to have people who want to achieve their goals in your business. Otherwise, what are we doing? That sucks for you, and they're not going to stay. They're not going to keep buying from you, and you're not going to be able to help them solve their problem. So, making
Yeah.
sure that people understand what they're doing, why they're doing it is extremely important. It's incumbent on a coach, a good coach especially, to be able to tie those things together.
Yeah. And I mean, mine's generally pretty much, I would say, very similar in the way that it's really important for coaches to understand like the deep rooted reasons behind, the superficial actual behaviors. And if you can't really connect the dots for people, they're really going to see it as busy work. And let's be honest, no one really has time for that these days. If they actually are trying to make some meaningful progress. So backing up for a second, it's kind of like, well, what is motivation inherently? And when I hear this question a lot, is like, what I'm picturing in my head is a coach grabbing a client and like repositioning their head to look in the direction that they want. And the client's just like trying to fight them every, step of the way. And I think that it creates a really unpleasant mutual experience for both the coach and the client. And so I would, suggest a repositioning or a reframe of like, well, why are you trying to force someone to do something they don't inherently want to do? At the end of the day, I mean, if you ever try to force an adult to do something they don't want to do, and it's not something that has significant long-term and immediate repercussions, I think you're going to have a lot less leverage to change their behavior. And so when someone comes to you and they say, I want to lose 5 pounds, that's really not long-term leverage, nor is it short-term benefit. And so when you think about how that changes the status quo, of course, they're not really going to be super vested in that. And as soon as the person that called them fat that caused them to go down the spiral is no longer around, or maybe they have some vacation, maybe their mother-in-law comes in, or maybe their father-in-law says a snide comment that causes the whole cascade of like, I need to lose weight. Well, we know that the trans-theoretical model of behavior change, they now know they have a problem, or they're now pre-contemplative. Now they're contemplative. Oh gosh, what do I do about this? And now you have to really solidify and connect that on a very deeply rooted level, usually externally. Because when we try to say like, hey, you don't want this enough, and we kind of like make it a moral thing of you versus good or bad, it's not really something that most people, when they fail, are going to feel super comfortable with. So we want to remove a lot of that judgment, and we just want to really try to understand, what the long-term ramifications of inaction are, because there's a cost to everything. And that means if you don't change, nothing is going to change. And that's where I usually like to offer that perspective to clients that, hey, like, we're not making the progress we want. What could potentially be, if we draw this out far enough, how is your life going to be? And are you okay with that? And sometimes that is a reality check that you need to ask. Although in my experience, usually most people, when they're invested in stuff, are going to eventually take a turn and do the things they're supposed to do. It might just take a little bit extra time for them to really understand what that looks like. But for the most part, people will do the things that they prioritize and the things that they inherently think are important. Your goal as a coach is to like understand what that is beyond what they're telling you, and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
So pretty much similar. Understand their why, go from there. So the next question though is, how do you fill the time between the work? Which is a more generalization of the question was, how do you fill the time between the sets? So when we talk about obviously the direct interaction or their execution of it, how do we go in and make sure that they don't A, get in their head, or B, have a complete meltdown and like, oh my gosh, I did a set of squats, I'm still having cellulite on my legs, it's not working. So Steve, from your perspective,
I would say on the
and this is
micro side of
relevant.
things, the smaller, like little things, this
Mm-hmm.
person is 100% over analyzing what's going on in this person's head in between sets. Frankly, unless you're not challenging them enough during the sets. Because I know for
Mm-hmm.
me, at first, it's like, hey, go rest for 3 minutes. I'm like, 3 minutes? That's like an eternity. I could lift 14 times more if I just keep going. But then I was like, wait, if I actually lift hard, I need like 2 minutes just before I feel comfortable again. And then another 30 seconds to psych myself out for the next set. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
Most people should be worried about that. On
Yeah.
kind of that macro level, a little bit bigger, when we're talking about the downtime in between, call it sets, so maybe in between sessions, in between experiences, in between whatever, there's only so much control that we can have during those downtimes. You want to be in front of people, but you don't want to be accessible 24/7, and that they're so reliant on you that they can't win without you. Because what are we really doing here? As much as we want to say I want to keep somebody with me for 20 years and pay me forever, like, it's just not realistic, and it's also probably not appropriate. Like, we're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
make people self-sufficient unless they continue to have bigger, newer goals. um but through that, you do want to be able to ask the questions along the lines of, hey, what's going on? What did you think of since our last session, our last check-in? Any thoughts that have come up since we did our assessment, or any of those things, and start to understand what is going on in their brain during some of those points in time. And knowing that the first answer they give you is probably a lie, or at least not the full truth, you got to dig 2 or 3 times and don't just sit there and go, why,
Mm-hmm.
why, why, because that gets really annoying really quick.
Please
But
don't do that.
asking those things, and then you'll truly start to understand, like, what are they talking about? And if they sit there, oh, well, I came back and I'm struggling to figure out why I need to eat this many carbohydrates, well, start having conversations around that so they become a little more educated, a little more knowledgeable,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So that would be my thoughts on kind of 2 different time scales. You?
Hmm. You just stare at them awkwardly, make sure that they know, and they get in their own head about, did I do what I was supposed to do? Is he mad at me? Is he proud of me? And, you really just bring out or you kind of front load the education stuff and then you backload the personal stuff. And that's both intra set and inter exercise, meaning obviously when you come in, people are usually thinking top of mind what just happened in their life. So you kind of open up with some rapport building while you're getting them warmed up. And then while you're actually starting your working set, you're giving them the workout briefing. Hey, this is what we have going on today. These are the things that we want you to start to wrap your brain around. Tell me how it's been since your last session or since our last time that we got to connect. And I'm kind of doing the debrief um, during the warm up. And then during the primary exercise one, I'll give them an educational tidbit during their kind of warm up sets. And then I'll kind of leave them alone / ask them more personal questions after they start getting fatigued, probably like the second or the third challenging set. And I'll take that same formula of like the front stuff. I'll kind of, again, educate the first set or two while they're warming up, which, by the way, like most people should probably do about 2 to 3 warm up sets for most things. So, that's if you just want to keep your connective tissues and stuff, and it's fine. Um, Guys, I'm pretty sure Steve is like, fuck that. I'm just gonna put 315 on the bar and fucking
I
squat this
have
thing.
changed that. I don't load more than one plate on the bar when I go to warm up.
It was really funny. Yeah, I remember the first time I was like, "Hey, man, are you recording your warm up sets?" And he was like, "What warm up? What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh my god!" He's like, 225, 275, 350. I'm like, "Dude, what the fuck?"
220 was a
And I'm
warm up
like doing
set.
the bar 50 times. Like, God, couldn't believe it. Animal. But yeah, I find that that's generally speaking like a way that you can capitalize on people's cognitive changes. And it's not just like you educating them the whole time, which gets really old really quickly. Although you find some people do like to do that. So again, during sets 1, 2, and 3, you're kind of educating them. Hey, this is what we should feel like during this workout. This is where you should feel that. This is what the load we're kind of looking at is. Tell me about your nutrition a little bit. If you want to kind of blend a little bit of that in there, mostly you're probably just collecting information. And then on the last couple sets, you ask them, "Hey, how'd that feel? How's your life going?" And people tend to give you a little more of the personal stuff when they're a little more vulnerable and when they're a little more like fatigued. And so that's why I say, like, you can kind of dig into some of those things if you had questions, if it's ethical and if it's relevant. And then generally speaking, as you get into your accessory exercises or your conditioning, if you're doing conditioning, you're just not going to talk to them. Probably you just encourage them a little bit. But if you're kind of just, again, beating the shit out of them like a hypertrophy workout and you're doing some kind of triceps or something, you're probably just asking about, hey, what do you got going on this weekend? You excited? You want to kind of give them something uplifting to focus on. Otherwise, just go in the pain cave, which, I mean, unless they're a BDSM connoisseur, most people are not really into that. So that's probably what I would suggest, of filling time between sets, which transitions us into like the next question when we're talking about vulnerability of like, how do you approach clients that are in crisis or like that are going through tough times, Steve?
So I think the disclaimer here out of the gates is understand your role and your responsibility and what your limitations
Mm-hmm.
are and what you're qualified to solve. You need to act as a friend, but be careful of some of the advice that you might give, right? Like I just want to start off with that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that all said, I think it depends on where you're at in the relationship with this person. If they come in second session ever training with you and it's just unloading a bunch of stuff, that's an entirely different scenario than maybe 2 years worth of history with them and understanding who they are. Uh, the
Mm-hmm.
2 week person is probably a little unhinged and off their rocker. Might be a good time if it's like wildly out of this world to just, maybe you should go talk to a therapist about some of these things and that might be able to help type situation. But if it's 2 years down the road and like they've never really done this, it's literally a thing and you guys have a relationship, then just being inquisitive and being there to be supportive is probably going to be the best thing for them. Again, it depends on the scenario, what's the actual thing going on. But it's hard. You develop relationships with your clients, especially over a long period of time. You want to help, but understand that certain people look to you at such a professional level that they'll take it and do the thing, but you're not qualified to necessarily give that advice. So on the
Mm-hmm.
eyes of kind of don't get in trouble and cause a problem, just be careful and make sure you're talking about things that are within the scope you should be able to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that scope is huge when it comes to, and scope of practice exists mostly from a legal perspective, but also because most people aren't really emotionally equipped or like competence wise equipped to help people navigate these things, which, I kind of liken it to if you're pulling on a thread in your clothes, like if you pull the thread the wrong way, you can start to bunch up the rest of the fabric. You can start to pill your shorts. You can really cause some long-term damage or really just reduce the durability of that thing long-term. And the same thing happens with people's emotions or, the issues that they're dealing with. And if you start to pull on a thread, you might really unravel somebody. And if they go back into the world and they're super raw and emotional and like, you just really done that person a disservice because who knows what kind of interpersonal or interactions they're going to have whenever maybe they need to go and see and pick up their kid from daycare or something else. And maybe they're just like crying and the kid now sees that. Now, there's just like second and third order effects here that we just want to be responsible for whenever we're dealing with people that are and going through a tough time, so to speak. Now, that's not to say that if you do have exactly what Steve said, like a baseline relationship, that would be very appropriate for you to just generally support them and hold space for them and like not necessarily offer super in-depth suggestions. Please don't ever recommend that people leave their job, leave their spouse, make any significant life changes outside of the gym. That is where you are going to fuck them up more often than not. Give them your opinion, let them know it's an opinion, but please do not encourage any substantive life changes. I've seen people quit their jobs because personal trainers said, you got to reduce your stress. Person quit their job, couldn't find another job, ended up going homeless. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Cautionary tales. And this is actually a great segue because we have a clinical collaboration course that, you know, helps you interface with the appropriate healthcare providers. And so that's something that as you're learning, how do you build your business and how do you, take care of your client, which is a very well-intentioned thing. The best thing that most people can do when it comes to mental illness or mental health issues is to refer them out to a mental health provider. And so we generally suggest finding a psychologist in your nearby community or somewhere that you can trust. Psychology Today is a great resource if you don't even know where to start to look for that stuff. Call these people, talk to them, mention that you're looking for a partnership, and that's probably a really good start for you. And that's what I would say is I'd leave it alone. Don't make any life changes. Just kind of give them a hug every once in a while if they need it and leave it at that. But now that's something that you also have to be cognizant of. There's something called compassion fatigue. And nurses are the biggest studied population where they kind of, if you've ever had a medical experience where you were dealing with a healthcare provider that really seemed a little more cold and callous and just not super caring, that's compassion fatigue because they're probably seeing people die. They're probably dealing with a lot of really sick people. People are just really, fucking pissy all the time anyway. So they kind of have to get hardened up and a little bit, callous to deal with that. So the next question is like, how do you continue when your own social battery is drained, Steve? And like, what do you do to just make sure you're showing up, in the best state for your people that you serve?
You got to take care of yourself first. So, your own workouts, your own nutrition, your own self
Mm-hmm.
care routine, sauna, cold plunge, massage, walking in nature, yoga, whatever the thing might be. And you need to take some time off, working trainers, fitness. It's not uncommon to work 6, 7 days a week sometimes, especially when you're really grinding, or 5 really long days and just be tired. So take time off, go on a vacation once in a while, figure it out. Even if it's a staycation and you're just hanging out at home in your backyard for a few days, take some time off. Otherwise, you don't have that chance to kind of recharge and miss your day to day. And that was one of my biggest mistakes that I made early on in my business ownership career. I just never took time off, and I got tired and I hated my businesses and doing the thing until I took time off. My first true time off was 3 or so years after I opened my first business, and I took 10 days off, and I came back and I couldn't wait to get back to work. But prior to that, maybe a 2 or 3 day weekend at most. And I always dreaded having to come back to work. So take care of yourself, give yourself some true downtime, understand you need to recharge before you can go out and take care of other people. That's easiest thing to think about.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say that, and to add to that, your social battery expands the more social you are. And so it's just like training, if you've never really done this before and you've never interacted with 6 people in a row back to back, and you're like trying to be high energy, and you need to have some strategies in there for what works best for you. Maybe you need a 15-minute buffer between clients to just go sit, stare at the wall, maybe do some admin stuff and make some use of that time. But I think that if you want to stay socially limited and have your battery constantly drained, one of the best ways to do that is to never give yourself the opportunity to adapt and recover. And so this is why taking, a couple of days off a week is probably really important. And I know a lot of trainers right now are probably doing a lot of split shifts if they're newer in the industry, because that's where you're probably going to get the most appointments. So you're actually not working that much. You'll probably work 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the evening, but because you're constantly there morning and evening, it's going to feel like you're there all the time. You're going to be there right before bed. You're going to be there after you wake up. And so that cycle is really what grinds people down mentally. So I would say that, just try to consolidate that maybe to one or the other after you kind of have a pretty full book. And that would be the first recovery measure that I would say, is trying to consolidate your schedule. The second thing is obviously like prioritize sleep. And I would say prioritize sleep just about anything else, even your food and your nutrition. Not to say that you shouldn't eat, but if you're not sleeping, like you're really going to have a hard time being compassionate with your clients, and having that positive perspective on clients and why they do what they do is really an important function of getting them to trust you, them feeling like you're really supportive with everything they have going on, and, just making sure that you show up your best self. And so also restoring your social battery as well. So sleep, drink some water, make sure you get your own workout in, and you actually want to schedule your own workouts. By the way, put that in your calendar. I think that's really important for people. Otherwise, your day will get run through and you just end up ragged, probably, in the 6 to 12 month range. And the last thing I'll say is that everyone's going to get burnt out. You're in the service industry and you're expanding that capacity. And so until you know what the borderlines are and where your limitations exist, you're going to just blast through them. And so you'll get burnt out, you'll go recover, get burnt out again, recover. And slowly that cycle gets really, really fine of like, exactly where that threshold is, where you can pull back and not have to take 2 weeks off to not have a complete shit fit and a meltdown, and try to kick your dog when you get home after working 14-hour day. Please don't kick your dogs, right? Cats are okay, but don't kick the dog. Dogs are lovable. They look at their eyes. But anyway, so that's what I would say is like, you got to know when you're getting a little ragged. The only way to know that is to get out there and get ragged, and then build some things around like, okay, when I am ragged, what do I do? Okay, well, I'm going to go and take a walk. Okay, I need to go and take 2 days. I'm going to go reconnect in nature. I'm going to go and watch a movie at the movie theater. Like whatever that is for you, whatever really causes you to feel better, you want to do that on a regular prophylactic, proactive state, and you're going to be just fine. But don't expect it to be sunshine and rainbows all the time, because frankly, it's just not realistic. So last question. So much for 15 minutes.
Last one.
All right. So this one revolves around refunds. So if you do charge for consultations, if the potential new client cancels the consultation appointment, do you refund the consult fee or something else?
No.
And basically, what's people's refund policies on
No.
In general around the initial service delivery?
No.
Yep. I'm agreeing. I think it's a short one.
I
They asked for that time. You can't use the time because they booked it.
yeah, like if you charge somebody a fee because you think you should, and this isn't a debate on whether you should or you shouldn't, but you felt you should,
Mm-hmm.
if they cancel or no show or some version thereof within reason of your rules. So if I cancel something 30 days out, you should probably give it back to them. If I cancel it 30 minutes out or a day out, probably can't. You're probably not. Then no, I wouldn't give it back. Would I allow them to
Mm-hmm.
reschedule that consult? 100%, probably within a certain period of time or something along those lines. But I wouldn't refund it. In general,
Mm-hmm.
I am a no refund kind of person, especially when time is attached to it. But I also try to put things in writing ahead of time, like, hey, if you need to
Mm-hmm.
cancel this thing, just let me know by XYZ time. And it really should just revolve around the idea of creating convenience is the wrong word, but structure, right? If somebody
Mm-hmm.
booked your 6 to 7 p.m., then you need to be able to put somebody else down there in there because somebody canceled. You probably can't make that happen 2 hours beforehand. You can
Mm-hmm.
probably make it happen the day before. You can almost definitely make it happen 2 days before, right? So, like, how do you leverage? Because as a coach, as a trainer, you are getting paid for your time. Your time is the most valuable thing. How do you leverage being able to refill it? Would be my guide for how I'm going to create this cancellation policy, so to speak.
Yeah, 100%. You can't get those units of time back. So, for me, if you cancel more than 3 days out, or if I'll let you reschedule, no fee, no nothing, no qualms. I'm like, hey, I really appreciate the 3 days out. This is the policy. You can reschedule whenever you would like, right? Ideally within the next couple weeks. You don't want to push that out too long, otherwise it gets weird. But we know that, and I've seen this with a lot of trainers. One of the policies they'll run is that if you cancel and or no show, you can reschedule within that business week at a time that's convenient for the professional that's rendering the service. And that's very, very reasonable. If you're doing anything more than that, I think that that's above and beyond customer service. But also, I think that hopefully you're a very immature business owner and you have the availability. If you don't have the availability, then you might even, frankly, if you don't need the business and you have a waiting list, you would double charge them. Like, you'd be like, all right, cool. You missed your appointment. Sorry. You're going to have to pay for another unit of time because I have a waiting list of people that don't mess with my time. And so I think it depends on where you are in terms of the maturity of your business, the pipeline that you have. Initially, you're going to have to chase people down to show up. And until you develop a really good reputation, which is why you want to be great at service, you're going to have to keep chasing people down. So that's my perspective. And that's our last question for the Facebook questions for the month so far. So if you guys like, maybe we'll continue to do this. Make sure you comment your questions if you have anything else that you want us to answer below. Otherwise, Steve, any closing thoughts?
No, that's it. We appreciate you guys jumping in today. If you don't subscribe yet, hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button if you got some value out of this episode, and throw a question down below so we can answer those for you in the upcoming episodes.
There we go. All right. Until next time. Peace.